Hi, in this video, we're going to go over the results to the A2A post-assessment. So this was a unit covering domain and range of linear functions. And question number 1 said, what are the domain and range of f of x equals negative 24? So remember that f of x is just another way to write y. And so this is the equation y equals negative 24. If you type it into your calculator, you'll see that y equals negative 24 is a horizontal line that is parallel to the x-axis and similar to this drawing right here. So the slope is 0 and all the y values are always negative 24 of a horizontal line. So whatever it is equal to, that will be the range for the function. So if I look at my answer choices, A says the domain is all real numbers, which is true because I have an arrow on both ends extending in both directions. But the domain and the range are both, this one says that the range is all real numbers greater than or equal to negative 24. Well, we know that's not true. What this function is saying, and if we looked in the table, every single x coordinate has a y value of negative 24. And so your answer is B. Number 2 says which graph represents a domain of all real numbers greater than negative 4. Remember that the domain is your x values, and so those are the values on your x-axis moving left to right. And so you'll notice I drew a little arrow on the function showing where the numbers are greater than negative 4 in the domain, which is on the x-axis. And so I'm just looking to see which function matches up with my arrow and where my arrow is moving on the coordinate plane. And you'll notice that f starts here at negative 4 and is moving this direction to the right because the values are getting greater and it starts at negative 4. And so F is the correct answer for that question 2. Question 3 says the cost of hiring a machinist Y to work X hours to repair a machine can be modeled using a linear function. The machinist charges a fixed assessment cost of $25 plus an additional cost of $35 per hour. The cost to repair the machine will cost no more than $305. What is the domain of the values of this function for this situation? So again, I'm looking for x values. Here is the hint. It says that the repair is not going to cost more than $305. That gives me a ending point for my range or my y values, which in turn also gives me an ending for my domain, which is my x values. So the equation here, I could write this equation and it would be $25 plus 35 for every hour. And I know that it can't cost more than 305. So I'm going to set this equal to 305 so I can find out the greatest hourly amount that corresponds to the greatest amount that I paid, which is 305. So if I subtract the 25, it's going to give me 280, and I'm going to divide that by 35. And so we end up with a max hourly amount of 8. Okay, so that means for my domain, I can start at 0 because my repair might only take like 30 minutes, right? So it's going to be continuous data. I'm going to start at 0. And then when I divide 280 by 35, I get 8. So the maximum number of hours, if it costs no more than 305, would be 8 hours. So I'm going to pick a domain that's between 0 and 8 hours, which is choice A. Question number 4 reads, the total cost C of renting college textbooks for a semester can be found using the function C equals 22.99t plus 8.50. where T is the number of textbooks rented. So it looks like the cost of each textbook is $22.99, and then there's an $8.50 fee. A student can rent no more than 10 books, and Carla will need at least 4 books. What is the range of this value of the values of this function? So this is discrete data because books are individual and I can't half a book or have a partial book. So I'm automatically not going to pick the inequality ones because this should be discrete data. And then I'm looking at Y range values, which is the cost. And so I can either pick 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is the number of books, or I can pick J, which is the cost of the books. And I'm going to go with J because I want the range, which is the cost, not the number of books. If they had asked for the domain in this particular one, then the domain would have been F. Question 5, what are the domain and range of f of x equals 58? Remember that f of x is just another way to write y. So this is y equals 58. If I typed it in my calculator, I would get a graph of a horizontal line crossing at 0, 58 right up here, which you'll see on my drawing. All y values are equal to 58 because the line is horizontal. So I am going to pick a range that is 58, which means my answer has to be D. And then my domain is all real numbers because I have an arrow on both ends of my function and it's extending infinitely to the left and to the right. Question 6 says the graph shows a train's distance in miles from Janesville, Wisconsin after riding the train for X hours. What is the domain of the value for this function? So my domain is my X value, so I'm going to focus here on my X axis, starting at 0 and going to 8. And so you'll notice at 0, when I start, the train is at 400 miles. And then as the train travels in hours, it gets closer and closer and closer down to 0 where it reaches its destination. And so for this particular function, and remember, this is not discrete data, this is a continuous line, so it's continuous data because I can take half hours and quarter of an hour and even down to the minute. And so the range or the domain, the domain for this one is going to be from 0 to 8 on the hours. So that's G. And then the range, if we wanted to talk about the range would be from 0 to 400 because my Y values are along this vertical axis here on the left. So this would be my range here. Question 7, the correct answer was C. The graph of a part of a linear function is shown on the grid. Which inequality best represents the range of the part shown? So this is a piecewise function, so we just have a little linear function right here. You'll notice on the left-hand side, I have an open dot on the coordinate, which means that this is going to be greater than but not equal to. And then on this end, we have a closed dot, which means it does include these values. So it is less than or equal to, depending on which way you're looking. And I'm looking for my range. So my range is my y-axis, which is right here. So we're going to be looking at the vertical axis. And when I look across here, I start at 3 and I travel all the way down to the lowest point and look across and it's at -3. And so I want to pick a function where we are starting at -3. We are greater than but not equal to. And then I am less than or equal to 3. And so our answer that matches that is C. Question 8 says the total cost T of traveling by taxi can be found using the function T equals 2.20 M plus 2.80, where M is the number of miles traveled in a single trip. For a maximum cost of $49, what is the domain of the function for this situation? So if my maximum Y value is $49, then I can take this equation and I can set it equal to $49, and that way I would find my maximum X value or my maximum domain value. Since we're traveling, I know that I'm going to be starting at 0. And because we're talking minutes or miles, which is measurable, and total cost, which is also measurable, and I can have partial dollar amounts, this is continuous data. And so when I plug in and I take my equation, I'm going to set it equal to this maximum cost, which is 49. And then I'm going to solve for the minutes. So how many minutes does it take for it to cost me $49? And it takes 21 minutes. That's going to be my domain value. That's my maximum domain value that matches up with my maximum Y value or my maximum range value. And so I chose all real numbers greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 21. And then our final two questions, number 9, the total cost Y of renting a party venue is a function of the number of people X attending the party. The owner of the party venue charges a fixed cost of $850 plus $1075 per person. The maximum charge is $2,355. So again, this maximum charge is my maximum Y value. So I created an equation based off the scenario, which told me that I was going to pay $850 plus $10.75 per person. So my maximum charge is $2,355. So I'm going to set my equation equal to that. Or you can type this portion into the calculator, press Control T, or just go to your table second and graph, and it'll hit you to your table on a TI-84. And then you can just look for this maximum Y value of 2,355 in your table, or you can plug it in and solve, and you solve to find out that the maximum number of people would be 140 at that charge. So that would be the greatest value in my domain, because my greatest domain value is going to match up with my greatest range value. And then number 10 says the Paint Pals shop is available for painting parties. The graph shows the cost of booking a painting party based on the number of people attending. What is the range of the function for this situation? So notice my range happens on my y-axis. I can look at my data points, and they stop at the highest, they stop at 275. At the lowest, they start at 25. So my range values are in between 25 and 275. They, however, are not going to be an inequality because this is discrete data. So I have individual coordinates on my graph, which means they are not continuous. So I'm not going to choose an inequality. And if I look here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are my domain values. And then the corresponding values over here for J are the range values. So you should have picked J, 25, 75, 125, 175, 225, and 275. And so those are the answers to our post-assessment for A2A. I hope you did well and learned from your mistakes so that you can do well on the EOC test in December.